we shouldn't just be chasing our own number, which is amount of downloads.
Dit is de Inbound4Cast. Een podcast over inbound marketing en organisch groeien voor B2B bedrijven. Hier is jullie host, Jero Arcus.
Steffen, welcome to my podcast. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Gerald. I think it's my first Dutch podcast that I'm on, so looking forward to it.
Yeah, indeed. We are talking today about marketing and sales and about the data part, measuring revenue. You are specialized in that. You have software for that. But before we start, can you introduce yourself and share one thing that most people don't know about you?
Okay. So I'm Steffen. Today I'm a CMO and co-founder of a company called Dream Data. I'll get to what we do later on. But the short story of my career is that I've always been working in B2B companies, always been working in very digital or completely digital companies, and always been working in marketing and growth related roles. In the last, 7-8 years now, I've been a marketing leader. So all sorts of B2B marketing stuff I've tried, and some I've failed with and some I've succeeded with, and so forth. My first love in marketing was SEO, probably like you as well. Yep. So back in the day, I used to do a bunch of that.
It's a good background to have, I think.
Yeah, you learn that there's systems, and you can typically always game the systems, and whether that's paid ads or organic or whatever it is, it's worth thinking about.
Yep.
What do people not know about me? I've climbed 2 of the highest mountains on 2 continents in the world. Not the toughest ones, but I've been on Kilimanjaro and then Mount Elbrus, which is the highest mountain in Europe, which is in Russia. So I think today it's harder to get to than it was. When was that? Almost 10 years ago now, or something like that.
Whoa, that's impressive. I've never done something like that, but I think you have to train very hard before you do something like that, right?
Yeah, to be honest, these are more like treks, these 2. If you can run 10 kilometers, you'll be okay for the most part.
All right. Well, still very nice and cool to do, I think. Then let's go to the topic of this podcast. I had an email from a colleague of you with some input, with some background information, and something I saw in there was that a lot of marketing departments are judged on the amount of marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads per year, per month, things like that. And I think that's not the way to go for you, right? So you don't like that, or you see it a little bit differently, what marketers should do.
I think what marketers probably underestimate is that success in B2B marketing is actually when the salespeople sell something.
Yeah.
Even though we like to, rank pages on Google or, collect a lot of emails so we can show a big number of leads that we've collected, then the scorecard for our work should truly be when the sales team sells something. And that also means that all of our work should be tailored towards helping them, and not looking at our work as a silo where once we're done, we just deliver it at the door of the sales room and then go back and don't speak with the sales team. So I think
that still happens a lot.
Yeah. Exactly, and it's a problem because, if you talk ROI on marketing, return on ad spend, etc., it all hinges on whether the sales team signs the contracts. And I think what I'm preaching for is that both the sales team start walking into the marketing room, but also the marketing team starts walking into the sales room. So they get to know each other, and they get to know, how does a good lead look like? What is a waste of time if you're a salesperson? For the marketing team, if there's questions that the sales team consistently have to answer in a sales call, well, probably marketing should create some great content to address these questions instead. So there's many ways that you can improve this, but you have to become aware that success in your company, in your B2B company, is when you sell something, and that's what we all need to try to support.
Yeah, indeed. But it also has some challenges. For example, the dark funnel, dark social terms you hear a lot these days. That it's harder and harder to measure specific things. So how do you look at that?
I don't agree that anything new has happened in that sense. I think what you're referring to is that it's become popular to talk about it and term it dark social. And what is meant by that is, if you do a LinkedIn post and there's no link to your website, then how are you going to track the value of it? And it's true that there's some marketing disciplines that more lends itself to qualitative measures, meaning that you get mentioned on social, or somebody mentions you on a Slack channel, or says that they heard your podcast on a sales call or something like that. And I think then you need to think about how can we take these things that are harder to measure and establish some qualitative proof of it. So I always encourage people to keep a folder on their computers where they take screenshots of everything that I'm never going to measure it, but it's still a sign that we are doing good quality marketing work.
Yeah.
And the same thing is that the salespeople should bring these anecdotes from the sales calls. If they say, hey, I listened to Gerald's podcast and it was great. If they don't bring that information back, then you don't get that feedback from the market that you've actually done something valuable.
Yeah, and I think I partly agree with that. I think dark social, dark funnel was always a thing. And sometimes we present it as it's something new. It isn't. But I think it might be a bit bigger than, let's say, 6-7 years ago, because less people click to websites, right? So 5 or 6 years ago, I would have written a blog article about something. Now I create a podcast and people don't leave Spotify.
Yeah. I think that's a good observation. I think that's very true. Like even before social media, then there was only websites. So everything had to be funneled through that. That's true. In terms of then measuring, I think what has been overlooked by B2B marketers for a long while, or in lack of knowledge of the same thing, is that people underestimate what B2B means, meaning that B2B companies are buying as teams. They're not buying as individuals. And, quite often if you get a visit to your website, it's going to be 6 or 12 months before you see money.
Yep.
And the tools that people have had available this far, the Google Analytics, the ad platforms, the CRM systems, they're not really wired to understand a customer journey that is this complex. And that leads to B2B marketers quite often being misled. So for example, let's say a CEO comes to you and say, show me in Google Analytics why your work is valuable. If you're in a B2C world where you sell running shoes, like people come to the website, buy the running shoe, then it will say the amount you've sold for in Google Analytics. But in B2B, there's the money component doesn't exist in Google Analytics.
Yeah, and I think a lot of marketers try to solve it with white papers and things like that. Yeah,
you're referring to people downloading, But then again, the thing is, there's a lot of difference between the quality of a download.
Yeah,
you might have 1,000 downloads and 0 sales, and you might have 50 downloads and 2 sales. So, and again, it's this understanding of we shouldn't just be chasing our own number, which is amount of downloads, but we should be chasing how many of the downloads have a quality where the sales team likes to spend time on them. I typically think about it as think about if you physically had the person who downloaded the ebook next to you in the office, would you then go present it to the sales team or not? So if the persona that downloaded is completely off who you normally can sell to, then you're de facto wasting your time if you send if you tell the salesperson to spend an hour with this person.
Yeah, and I think because of that and some other reasons, a lot of B2B marketers are now moving away from white papers again and from gated content.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on that? Do you think it can still work, or do you think we should quit doing it?
Yeah, so there's a lot of it depends here. I think in general, I am not a big fan of gating anything, but you need to identify people at some point. Like when they book a demo call, you probably want to know who booked it, or maybe it's a fair payment for you putting in a lot, like creating a 5,000 word ebook. Then them handing over their email is probably not unreasonable. The way we typically do it at Dream Data is to use the gating function more like when we do paid advertising, as a way to kind of understand the value of the paid advertising. And then you would find the same content completely open on our website if you came to the website. So we kind of pick and package a little bit different depending on what is the scenario we're looking for.
Yeah.
And then other times it's also just that maybe people are not at the stage where they want to actually talk to you yet, but as a recognition of what you do, that it's relatively interesting, then they'll say, let me download your ebook so you know a little bit about me and I know a little bit more about you. So it's kind of a step towards something more, a more serious relationship that is easier to take besides booking a call.
And do you also try to attach revenue to that part? So more the top of the funnel part, people who are not ready yet to buy?
Yeah, so like I can just quickly say what we do at Dream Data. Basically, okay, a little bit technical explanation, and then I'll give
That's
you my
good.
answer. We basically take whatever data silo that you have today that touches your B2B customer journeys and extract the data out of all these different silos into one data warehouse. And inside this data warehouse, we clean up the data so you know all touches on all accounts. So that means if let's think about a Dutch company. I don't know. Siver, I believe there's one. I don't know if you've been familiar with those.
Not sure, but
Anyway, but typically a customer journey lies in many different silos. So that could be your CRM system, your marketing automation system, your customer success tool, your outreach tool, your website, your ad platforms, etc. All of these touches goes into the same picture with our tool. So you can kind of, and that solves a very essential marketing problem, because the ones that start the journey in B2B is rarely the ones that signs the contracts.
Yep.
And this makes our investment in starting journeys look like a cost, a loss of money, while it's actually the first touch of money you get 6 months later.
And I worked a lot in the past with HubSpot. I don't know yet exactly what your software company is doing, but in HubSpot, it is all centered around the contact. So, and I think that part worked better 6-7 years ago than it does now, because of less people clicking to the website and consuming your content somewhere else. But what you are doing, is it in the same direction, or are there some differences when you look at how to collect data and present it?
Yeah. So first of all, HubSpot is a great tool for many things, but it's a marketing automation platform and a CRM system. It's not suited to aggregate data from all sorts of places and cleaning it up and then giving you complex images of what's going on.
Yep.
And then even with HubSpot, you can't say just HubSpot, because some build their website on HubSpot, some run ads, and some run marketing automation, and some has it as a CRM.
Yep.
So in the case, for example, where you're using a CRM that is not HubSpot, but you're using the marketing automation system, for example. Then say you collect the lead and it gets some automations from HubSpot. You still don't know the component of the sale happening. So we have many customers that use HubSpot as a marketing automation and Salesforce as a CRM, and then we can kind of link the journey together from when you bought the click or got it organically. Somebody downloaded an ebook, and then 6 months later you sell to them.
Yep.
These are the things we want to understand, and so that's why, like, coming back to where we started this part, then we can take anything that has a digital reflection in a B2B company and say whether money came out of it later on.
So let's pick this podcast as an example. There's some data from my podcast in YouTube, some data in Spotify. Is this data that you can transfer to a platform like that? Maybe I just picked the wrong examples, but...
Yeah, that was a tough example because this data is kind of... they don't expose which people did what.
No, you can't identify the person behind it.
So if we say somebody who clicked an ad for your company came to your website, then we can track the person and we can see which UTM they brought with them. And then we can then store that information on the user in a database. And then we know if that ad was part of a deal you win 6 months later. Yep. But I think that's also, we're not in the business of describing 100% of customer journeys. We can take anything you have collected that has a digital reflection and then put that into the picture. And that's about, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is the king, or something. What is it, the quote? Something like that. So we want to enable you with what you can know. We will show you.
We don't know everything, and we have to accept that. But the part that we know can still help a lot to make the right decisions and to optimize campaigns, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And then, for example, this thing like your podcast being consumed. There you really need to think about it a bit of it's always the tip of the iceberg when it comes to content. You don't hear all the value that it creates for you. It opens many doors that you're not aware about.
Yep.
So when you do see the podcast mentioned or the salesperson hear it mentioned, then they have to relay that information back. So you get the confirmation that we're on the right path here.
And that's part of how you do, how you work, how you help customers to also add the human input.
Yeah, and I think it's also that's where, as you get more experience with marketing, you also know that we should strive to measure as much as we can, but we shouldn't blindly just look at data. We need to, use our gut feeling and experience as well. So if you did an episode that you can see it gets mentioned, it's valuable. You don't have to second guess yourself.
And maybe you can also split marketing in two different parts. You have the brand building part and you have the sales activation part. And maybe what you do is a little bit more focused on the sales activation part for people who are already in the journey. And this podcast is maybe more part of brand building, something it's a bit harder to measure. You can't see which person viewed it, listened to it, etc.
Absolutely. And I think it is this thing about people need to have a first experience with your brand somewhere.
Yeah.
And if you're only competing for, let's say, SEO Netherlands or something like that, then it's going to be very expensive for you to buy attention to what you do. Whereas with this podcast, you might get a few hundred people listening every time, and they get this first impression of who you are. And then later on, when they actually need somebody with your skills, then they would know that they should have a conversation with Jarl.
Yeah, for me, a big part of why I have this podcast, I have a lot of reasons, but a big part is also to build a little bit of a personal brand. And those people aren't going to buy anything from me right now, also not in the next few months. But I think B2B marketing is a lot about building relations. And this podcast is a way to meet new people, the people I talk to, but also I meet a lot of my listeners, people who send me a message on LinkedIn, and then you chat and you connect. And That's very valuable, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also like a little bit particular just on your case, then like we're building brands because we know we need to work for the next 30 years or something like that. So just because we can't kind of harvest the seeds right now, they might still be nice 5 or 10 years from now, or you never know what's going to happen.
Indeed. So back to, let me think, what was the original question that we started with? Maybe you mentioned CRM. What's the role of the CRM system in what you offer and how you can attach revenue to marketing activities?
Yeah, good question, Gerald. The CRM system, you can say, do two things that are really important for us. One thing is that's typically where we get the revenue component. So the deals that are moved into the sales pipeline and the deals that are moved into, we won the deal and it's worth XYZ. So the revenue component is what we need as marketers to know whether we wasted money or not. And then we also use the CRM to find out where people belong, which companies are they actually part of. So when you have a conversion on your website, we will go look inside the CRM system to see if we can find a relationship between me and a company.
Yep.
Because we want to sort every person in our data warehouse. We want to sort every person to the account that it belongs to. So it's every conversion, we look at it. How can we sort it to the right journey so we can take the actions of that individual and make part of the right timeline?
How would you call it? Is it on your website? I see the term data platform. Is that the right term?
Yes, we call it a revenue attribution platform right now. So
I think you also have multiple features in it, right?
Yeah, and so like the product itself is a go-to-market data platform, meaning any touch that touches your account journeys, we will clean it up and make available for you. And then the different analysis you can do is which of my paid ads lead to revenue, or which blog posts are more likely to influence revenue, which countries or companies are most attractive. It can be like the search you get from Google, is it valuable or not? So it's anything that has a digital reflection we can take and say money came out of it or not.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I see a lot of logos of tools and platforms that you can attach to it.
Yeah, we're quite focused on our ideal customer is a B2B software company. And the reason for that is that you typically see that they do a lot of digital marketing. So the first time people hear about these companies are through digital activities.
Yep.
They will have inside sales teams that use sales tools like CRM or calling software or something else. And they will also deliver their company digitally online. So you can kind of come full circle from for the first time somebody heard about your business to when they bought your product and logged into your product. So that's why and then coming back, so the tool stack that we integrate with is very much what B2B software companies use. And it's actually rare that we get requests for other tools because we're so focused on doing marketing to attract these kind of people, which means then the product team doesn't have to there's another CRM. They can just focus on making a few integrations really good.
Yeah, and let's go back to the HubSpot part. Let's say that someone listens to this podcast and they use HubSpot right now and they have quite some data in there. Why should they start using Dream Data?
Again, it depends on what is your HubSpot use case. What is the maturity of your company? So say they only use HubSpot for CRM, for marketing automation, for the website, then they might be okay with just understanding their journeys in HubSpot for a while. But as soon as they want to answer more sophisticated questions, then we get a lot of customers that only use HubSpot and come to us, and that is because the level of detail, as you said, you can't, if it's just contact based attribution. Well, that doesn't matter so much if you're a B2B company, because you need to follow the full journey.
Yep.
Or it can be very granular analysis of every campaign that you're running. Does that drive revenue or not? But the most of our customers, they do have a more diversified tech stack, so data in different places than HubSpot. And then it's a much simpler pitch, because they don't understand their journeys, and we can kind of unify it and give them a holistic understanding of it.
Yeah, indeed. Maybe good to also mention to the listeners, this isn't a sponsored podcast.
No.
But I'm just curious about how the tool is working and how you can use it.
I think it's actually, there's a lot of B2B marketers that don't know what technology is available out there today. And I think we can really I can just talk about the process and the technology and not mention our company. There's so much you can do today to actually understand what's going on. There's also, I don't know if you're familiar with customer data platforms.
Yep.
But essentially, you want to have a unified view of one person, meaning that you want to know the computer, the phone, the tablet of this one person, and then you want to know every time they come to your website. That you can do with a customer data platform, segment.com being one of them. But that journey needs to have context in a B2B world. So then the next thing you need to do is you need some data engineers that can take the individuals and map into a timeline of accounts. When you have a timeline of the individual account and you touch on that account, then you want to link the account to money, which is the CRM system. And once you have all journeys linked to money, then you can start describing, okay, we spent 100,000 euros on ads this month for this quarter. Did it yield enough money for us for it to be a good business case or not a good business case? And these are the questions that you really should be looking to answer if you want to impact your company profitably through B2B marketing.
Yeah, and I think for some channels, it's the data is pretty complete. For other ones, it might be a bit harder. So to give you an example, and I gave this example before in my podcast, but I once heard a story about Ahrefs, the SEO tool, how they have a very successful YouTube channel and they can't measure it. But when someone becomes a customer, they fill in the form that they heard from the company through their videos on YouTube. I can imagine that for that part, it's a bit harder. And you don't want to shut down the YouTube channel just because you can't see the revenue it has created.
Exactly. And I completely agree that there's just some things, that some disciplines inside of the marketing umbrella that is easier to measure or not. I think it comes down to you also finding out, what are you good at as a marketer? Is it creating video? Is it writing? Is it speaking? And then you should really, or running ads or SEO. And, because you're good at SEO, there's a lot of technical measures. The page is starting to rank. Now it's number one. Do we have conversions on the page? That's great. Yep. If you're really good at producing YouTube content, well, then you have to think about other ways of capturing the value. For example, having these, I think people call them self-reported answers, like, how did you hear about us? And if 1 out of 10 writes YouTube, then YouTube is probably super important.
Yeah. Yeah, so you have the contact level, you have the company level to look at the data, and then the content level. So, for example, for all blog articles, maybe see how much revenue did it generate, but also maybe one article is generating 80% of all the revenue. So analyze which topics are resonating with our audience.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to notice so that you focus your next content production on stuff related to that one that produces 80%. Or if that one that produces 80% is only ranking 4th or 5th on Google, what about if we moved it to number 1? Then that's very likely to correlate with even more money.
Yeah, and without this data, I could decide to start optimizing all articles together. But maybe based on this data, I want to focus on just 2 of them and get a top 3 position for them.
Exactly.
All right. Interesting. How do you start? When a B2B company, B2B marketer is listening to this podcast, and they have some data in place, but a lot of silos, is there a specific process that you can go through, or?
Yeah, I think the first thing you can do is to think about all the things you do with customers, whether it generates digital reflections or not. So meaning that does the sales team actually have a CRM system or not, where they can keep track of their communication? Do they just call people on their phone, or do they use a calling software that logs that on this day you called this person?
And that's hard for a lot of marketers, because I saw a lot of organizations who sometimes don't have a CRM. Sometimes they do have it, but they don't have revenue data in there. And some people work with it, others not. The contacts are not complete in there. And I, as a marketer, can say you have to update this and clean the data, but in a lot of cases they don't listen to it.
So in that case, you will need to think about, can you see yourself prospering in a company that doesn't take data serious enough?
Yeah.
Or then you need to, have frank conversations with the CEO or whatever is your leader, saying that I want to understand as much as I can, but it stops when it comes to I've collected leads because the sales team is a mess and I don't know what's going on in there.
Yeah.
The most important thing is that you're proactive about it, that you have open conversations. And if you feel like you don't have, the right setup, then tell people that you don't have the right setup. So what you can give them is XYZ. The important thing is that you face the tough conversations and just have them openly and recognize it, so you don't get fired if the sales team doesn't sell enough. It's like, then I've told you, I can't see what's going on.
But do you hear this a lot? Companies who don't have their data in place, or
it's not so much a problem for us, as we're going so heavily towards B2B software companies who likes to use tool and are heavily data driven. So in that sense, we probably live in a bit of a bubble. It sounds like you more come across these companies that doesn't have us. It's very standard in B2B and particularly B2B software to have a CRM system where the customers are there, which contacts are part of the deals, when did we send them a mail, when did we have a meeting, when did we call them, etc. So if you don't have a CRM system in your company today, I would rush out and before thinking about marketing analytics or anything else, start getting that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think most companies maybe have CRM, but when you want to use the data, they say, well, you can, but it's not complete. It's that part. But maybe if you have a maturity model for being data driven as an organization, using software like this is more for the people who already have a lot of data, understand it, have a good CRM, and then want to make the next step.
Yeah. And I think it's also like, whatever position you're in, you should demand that we have a good data. What do you call it? Framework or data habit. Whether you're the CEO, you should tell the sales director, I don't want to see a messy CRM system. Clean it up so we know what's going on. Or if the sales leader sees that the salespeople don't respect it, like ultimately fire them if they don't adhere to what is the vision of your company.
Yeah, indeed. How do you see this? The things that we are talking about, so the collaboration between marketing and sales and the data part, measuring everything, how do you see it develop in the next few years? Are there some big trends that are changing this or impacting this?
I definitely see it improving. I think in the B2C world, they've been so used to being able to say, click, website sales. I think
for
that
e-commerce, it's easy.
yeah, all of this is coming to B2B now because technology is enabling it. So more and more companies are naturally becoming more and more interested in it because it's more effective. It helps you spend your money better. And I think it will come as demands for all marketers that they're able to explain why they're doing things and how the things that they are doing is having a positive impact on their business. Hopefully, at least my vision for marketing is that marketing is not just the people who produces slides and produces trade shows, etc. I do marketing because I want my company to do better. And then I don't care what I have to do. I just want us to sell more. And then there's different kind of things you can do there. So I think the combination, and maybe the last component right now, is this also the world being a little bit in a economical contraction forces people to think more about the money that they spend, which again will trickle down into questions of, hey, why is the marketing budget like it is? What are we getting out of it? How can you prove that what's coming out of it? So I think there will be this shift from where what you've been used to having available in B2C will now more and more become more and more transparent in B2B as well.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing. What do you think are the biggest challenges to overcome related to this?
I think
so for the marketing manager, let's say, who wants to start being more serious with data.
I think it's a lot about people don't know what they don't know. So it will take some time for people to become aware that this shift is happening. I think one thing that they should take with them out of this conversation is to think about the customer journey as you're selling to a team and not just an individual. And then just start being very, very curious about how your company sells, how your company makes money, because in B2B, they don't just show up at your doorstep ready to buy. They've always been part of some kind of awareness journey, from listening to a podcast to seeing the logo somewhere to coming to the website.
Yep.
And if I think about it typically as, when I was a kid, I played computer games, and sometimes there would be cheat codes for the game. And in marketing, understanding your customer journeys and knowing if you do X, Y, Z, and then money comes out, that is the cheat codes. So you need to be super curious about what happened and try to replicate that or scale it and so forth.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, marketers are chasing the shiny new things, tactics, channels, platforms, and they forget the basics. And understanding your customer is, I think, always been part of marketing, but a lot of people still forget it and don't spend enough time to do that.
I agree.
All right. Then my last question, I always ask it to my guests. If you could go back 10 years in time with a time machine, what advice would you give yourself?
The first thing that comes to mind is then, if something works, then double down or triple down or 10x what you're doing, because it will stop working at some point. I think that is the terrible thing about being part of marketing, is that at some point all tactics stop being as effective as they are right now. So I'm old enough to remember in Google Analytics, you can see the keywords people searched for. That's a long time ago, but think about how easy it was back then.
I think 2011, something like that, and you could see the conversions for specific keywords.
Yeah. I think, and then Google search ads, Facebook has had a honeymoon period. There's always going to be these new things that are working super well, and as soon as you discover they work well, then like bet your career on it, because it's gonna explode, but it's also gonna stop working because all other marketers figure it out. We can't stop talking about it on podcasts, etc. Yep. And then all of these things are work like auctions. So more and more people, more and more competition, the harder it gets. So while something is working, triple down.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think maybe we as marketers should talk more about this. For example, I see a lot of people who now are talking negatively about lead generation and it should all be demand generation. And a part of it I understand, and they have some good arguments for it. But I think demand generation will have its challenges too. And I think they already have it because a lot of people are doing demand generation on LinkedIn. Well, the algorithm changed a few weeks ago. So a lot of people get less reach on LinkedIn. And I just posted a LinkedIn post this morning about I did some tests on TikTok and it wasn't B2B related, but I get with 4 videos in 5 days, I think more than 130,000 views. I was really impressed,
Yeah.
and it were AI generated videos with an AI
Whoa.
avatar,
Yeah.
so I could create them in a few minutes. So this is my new project I'm working on now a lot. But in 2 or 3 years from now, you can't do that on TikTok anymore.
No, then
It surprises me that you can
yeah.
still do it right now.
Yeah.
But that will always be the case in marketing.
So that's a good example of something you should right now. You should do more of it when you get that. Fuck, it actually works right now.
Yeah, and to be honest, I do it for my podcast sometimes also. It costs a lot of time, but create some vertical videos, some snippets, and they don't work. So I think the B2B audience is on TikTok because I think a lot of people are on TikTok, but there's not a lot of people making B2B videos on TikTok.
Yeah.
And I think maybe TikTok has not enough data to understand who wants to see this content, because I do see it a lot for SaaS companies. There's a lot of content on TikTok for that at the moment, but not for a lot of other companies.
Yeah, and I think it is for any company. It's about thinking about who is it that we're selling to and where are they on the internet. They might not be on TikTok, but then they're in a community somewhere. So you need to map it for your own company. These are the people, this is where they live. And then
yeah, I agree, but I also think so 10 years ago sometimes I saw some buyer personas and the buyer journey for specific roles, and then they said this persona is on Facebook, and then I thought, well, everybody is on Facebook now. Not everybody is on Facebook anymore, but then they were. And yeah, I think for TikTok, it is a little bit different. I think maybe the CMO spends less time on it and it's more Gen Z on TikTok. But also a lot of people from my age are starting to adopt it right now.
I try not to.
Yeah, it's a bit addictive. All right. Thanks a lot for the nice conversation. Where can people find more information about you or the company?
Yeah, so I spend then way too much time on LinkedIn, so people can go look me up there and connect, and I'll be happy to answer any question they might have. Our website is dreamdata.io, and we have a super nice free product that people can go and try out.
Great. Thanks a lot and have a nice day.
Wonderful, Gerald. See you.
Yes.
Bedankt voor het luisteren naar de Inbound4Cast. En vergeet niet om je te abonneren via YouTube of in je favoriete podcast app.